friends! Today I am working on a mixed media canvas, and I actually ran out of canvas board, so I decided I was going to work on this one on a piece of chipboard. So here I'm just getting the chipboard covered with gesso, and chipboard's pretty absorbent, so you know, it's kind of porous. It's sucked in that gesso. So after the first coat, I went in with my heat tool and got it completely dry and decided it did need a second coat. So I went ahead and did a second coat of gesso just to make sure that it was really good and completely covered. And then after the second coat of gesso, I made sure it was completely dry before I continued on. And here I'm using some of my Faber Castell Gelatos, and if you've never used these, they're really cool. They kind of have the consistency of like a soft crayon, but they're water soluble, so you can paint with them like watercolors. So they have a lot of different uses. They smudge, they're a little bit waxy. It's just a really neat medium to use if you've never tried it. But here, what I'm going for is a marbled design for the background. And when I first started using them, I pretty quickly realized that they were going on really thin. So right now, all I'm trying to do is just get a nice, you know, some nice color down, have some like lighter areas, some darker areas. So I'm just filling in some of the space right now, and then I'm going to go in and try to create some of the marbled effect. And the brush I'm using is a long bristled round brush, so it sucks up a lot of water and a lot of pigment if you want it to. So here what I'm doing is I'm picking up quite a bit of pigment on a drier brush, and then I'm putting it down on the chipboard, and then I'm going in and filling my brush up with water, and then putting it down on the pigment and letting the pigment just sort of run. I'm trying to encourage all of this to go in one direction, so I'm trying to create diagonal lines that go up and to the right. But I don't want them to be perfectly straight lines. I'm trying to make this look organic like marble, so you can see I'm trying to give them a little bit of character, trying to let the water just kind of move it around and to create you know, this marbling effect. Altogether, this background took me about 45 minutes to do because I was really taking my time and trying to get the water to pool and run. So it wasn't a super fast background, but I'm really happy with how it turned out, and it was worth the time that it took to get the effect just right. Another thing that I really liked was laying two colors down next to each other. So I would take some of the purple and then some of the pink, or some of the blue and then some of the red, and lie them right next to each other on the board. And so this would cause them to pool together and create new colors, and just gave it a really natural look. So if you're trying to get different colors or trying to get a pooling effect, that is one way to try to do it, is to lay the two colors next to each other. From here, I went in with my heat tool, and I'm just trying to help these kind of puddly areas dry a little bit faster. And then this ended up really giving me the effect that I wanted. So as I'm heating it, the air is blowing the pigment around on the board, and it's causing it to clump in areas and look really a lot darker than the other areas on the board. And this made it look like the veins in the marble. If you've ever seen, you know, real marble, it's got these little darker veins that run through it, and that's how I got that effect. And I don't think it would have looked as good if I hadn't done that. So that was just a happy accident, but that's one way to really make it look a little more realistic, is by using a heat tool or a hair dryer to move that pigment around. And here, there's just some areas that were a little bit lighter than what I wanted. So I'm going in with some of my Faber Castell big brush markers, and I'm just putting down some extra pigment. Because it's covered in gesso, these aren't permanent right away. So this is India ink that are in these markers. So if I was putting this just down on an uncovered piece of paper, they wouldn't move around. But because this chipboard has gesso on it, it's, you know, letting me move the pigment around a little bit before it becomes permanent. Now I'm going in with a stencil by Tim Holtz. This stencil is Burlap, and I'm using modeling paste and my art knife or putty knife, and I'm just pressing it and moving it through the stencil just to give the background some texture. After you finish this step, you want to make sure that you get the modeling paste really well and dry before you move on. Or you'll lose the texture when you start sticking things on top of it and pressing down. I'm just using some scraps of scrapbook paper to cut out a heart, and then I'm using my matte medium to stick this down. I like using matte medium because you can paint over the top of the paper and it kind of gets rid of that porous surface. It makes it a little slick once it's dry, but because it's matte medium, it doesn't look shiny. So this is nice if you're wanting to add some shading to the object, which I pretty much do in every mixed media. I go in and add shading, and this is the way that I get the ink to move around. One thing I didn't show here, but I definitely did, was I went in with my heat tool and made sure that matte medium was really good and dry before I went in with my big brush markers. And the reason that you want to make sure it's super dry is because any little bit of medium that gets on the tip of these markers or the tip of a pen, it's like glue, so it'll clog up the tip, and then you won't be able to use the marker anymore. I've ruined more markers than I can say doing this, so just make sure that it's really good and dry before you go in and start shading or start adding anything on top of it. One thing that I like to do is to create a lot of layers. I just like the depth that it gives, any of my art. So even though you just saw me shading in the heart, you're gonna see me do it a few times throughout this video. The more you layer, the more depth it gives, and I just like that look. And here I just put some of the big brush marker ink, the India ink from the marker, down onto just a tin lid, and I'm just painting it on. And then I'm taking a baby wipe, or you can use a paper towel, and I'm just dabbing it off the top of the texture. So this way it gives it kind of a rustic or like a distressed look, but also it's not just completely covering it up. So I'm just tapping the top of the textured area lightly to pick up some of that ink after I've got it down kind of in the cracks and crevices. And then I'm using that same marker just to go around the edges and create a frame or a border around the piece. And the same thing here, I like to layer this, so you'll see me do this right now, and then I'm going to move away and work on some other things, but I will come back once it's dry, and I'm going to keep working on the border and working on the shading around the edge. Now I'm going in with some various butterfly stamps, and I'm going to stamp a couple different butterflies on here. At this point I wasn't really sure how I wanted the layout to be, so I ended up stamping 3 different kinds of butterflies, and I only ended up using 2 different types that I stamped. So this is Stays On ink in the brown color. that I'm using, and stays on is nice because it is permanent. Like as soon as you put it down, it's permanent. So I'm going to go in with some matte medium and paint over the top of these butterflies, and I'm doing that so that I can go in with my big brush markers. But the nice thing is when you paint down the matte medium, the ink's not going to move around from where you stamped your butterfly or your image. So after the matte medium is nice and completely dry, I'm going in with my big brush markers and I'm just adding the color to the butterflies, and then I'm kind of tapping off some of the excess color to give it a distressed look. And one thing that's really nice about putting down the matte medium on top of after you stamp is that it gives the ink time to dry. So you can go in and smear the ink, you can smudge it, you can make it look distressed by tapping on it. There's a lot that you can do by using this technique. I've had a lot of people ask me about these big brush markers, and they are made by Faber Castell, and these are the markers that you'll see in a lot of my videos that I'm using to smudge or to create like a distressed look. And I got these at Hobby Lobby. I bought them, they didn't come in a set, they came individually. So to be honest, I bought them a long time ago, and so I mean we're talking probably 4 years ago, and they still are holding up really well. I do store them horizontally, so I think that helps. They do recommend that that's how you store them. So I don't know if that's helped prolong the life or if they just kind of always last that long, but they have a ton of ink in them and they last a really long time. And they hold up really well. So I've been super happy with the purchase. Like I said, I didn't buy them in a set. I bought them individually, so I got to pick what colors I wanted. They are a little bit pricey, but for me, they're really worth it. I use them a ton. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know. I haven't been in that section of Hobby Lobby in a long time, so I don't even know if they still sell them there or not. It's been so long since I purchased them. Here I'm just painting on some matte medium and sticking the butterflies onto the heart with that matte medium. And again, you'll see I'm going over the top with the matte medium just to kind of seal in the colors that are already there. I also am making sure to go around each piece so that there's matte medium around it, because I know I'm going to go in and shade around the butterflies and around the hearts that I'm sticking down right now. Those were also stamped. And now I'm just sketching in some of the details that I want to add to the heart. I like to kind of sketch out what I'm going to do before I go in with a pen, because I never get it right the first time. And then you'll see I just took a paper towel and ran it over the big brush marker lines just to distress them. And now I'm going in with some Distress ink by Tim Holtz, just creating some more distressed area around the line I just drew. I believe the color I'm using is Vintage Photo. It's my favorite distress ink that I have. And here I'm just going in with my pen and I'm drawing some stitch marks around the heart. It took me a couple tries, but I finally found a white pen that worked really well and stuck out against the canvas. I believe that this is an acrylic paint pen. I'm just looking for a stencil with circles. I actually ended up using 3 different stencils. They're just circular stencils that have different sized circles, and I'm using my modeling paste and going in and just creating some circles on top of the heart I created. And now I'm going in with some Perfect Pearls powder that's made by Ranger, and I'm just dusting that on the wet modeling paste. So I'm just barely tapping the top with a very small paintbrush and just adding some shimmer to the modeling paste. I'm using some chipboard sticker letters, and I'm spelling out the phrase break free, and I'm using matte medium to stick these down. It took about 2 layers of matte medium to make sure that they were really well stuck down. And then I'm going back in with the Vintage Photo, and I'm just using a soft dauber tool to just shade the outside frame area, and then I'm also shading the letters to make them pop off the canvas a little bit more. I'm also going back in with the big brush marker and in the color dark sepia and just outlining the butterflies and then smudging that with my finger. And once I've added a few last highlights to the piece and made sure they were completely dry, I'm pretty well done. So this is the final product. A little bit of a close-up so you can see closer what I was adding. But I'm really happy with how it turned out, and using the chipboard I was a little bit concerned that it would warp, but it actually turned out pretty well, so I was happy with it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you are not subscribed and you would like to be subscribed, hit that subscribe button and make sure to hit the bell so you'll get notifications when new videos come out. And I do have a whole playlist of art journal videos and tag videos if you're interested in those. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram so that you will get to see all of my goings on throughout the week. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!